This is Professor Homa. Welcome to CSC 103 Intro to Computing class. And I'm recording this video special just for you. And what I'm going to do is just go over Pixlr just like I did in class, but I'm just going to do it so that if you weren't paying attention, you have a chance to look at it and watch it again. I'm going to use Pixlr to crop and edit a photo and just do some basic adjustments. I'm going to pixlr.com, P-I-X-L-R, there's no E in there. And what I'm going to do when I get to pixlr.com is I'm going to scroll down and look for the Pixlr editor, not the Express. I'm going to launch the web app. And by the way, if you get a message that says something about not having Flash and you get a message to either leave the site or stay, hit leave, even though you think, well, why does it want me to leave the site? If you leave, it's going to basically put up another little box that'll allow you to run the Flash player so that it could basically run this interface. So leave the site and then allow the Flash player if you get a message like that to come up. And what we're going to do here, and I did this just to make it easier, we're going to open an image from a URL. Now when you do yours of your image, you're going to open the image from the computer. You're going to navigate to it on your computer. But just for this little example, I'm going to navigate to a place on the web. And you could also, if you have something on the web, a picture of you or anything else, you can edit pictures on the web. Now when it comes into Pixlr, then you're not editing the one on the web. It's going to be yours when you go to save it. So to get to one on the web, what I did was give you a little URL to my website, homastudio.com, and I'm just going to put a /img, and then I'm going to put another slash. That means it's going into a folder, and it's going into an image folder that has a photo called deer-homa.jpg. So it's just a photo in there. It doesn't show up anywhere else on the site, but I just put it in there so you can navigate. You could still get it if you know that it's in there. So, and here it is. Here's the photo of a deer that I took out of my car window. And we're just going to copy this URL. You could just copy this and do like a Control-C or a Command-C on a Mac. And go back here, and I'm going to open from URL. Now, since I copied the whole URL, I'm going to highlight over this. It's kind of hard to see because it uses black as a highlight. But I'm highlighting backwards over that, and I'll do a Control-V or a Command-V. And I'll hit OK. And there it is, open in Pixlr, and there's the picture of my deer. Now I could zoom in a little over here in this navigator area, just slide it a little bit into the deer. I could scroll around a little bit. I don't want to go in too far because I want to crop it. Now here's the crop tool right here. It's already selected, and it just kind of makes like a rectangle. It doesn't have to be a perfect square. I'm just going to kind of zoom into that deer, and you can see it makes a little grid around it. You can resize this by grabbing on the corners and bringing it in. And that's about right for the deer if I wanted to crop this deer. And to OK this, now if you click off, if you're like, oh, I want to zoom in more or anything, it's going to give you a message like, do you want to apply? And if you do, hit yes. If you don't, hit no. And then you could just cancel and it'll just like go back to where you are here. But I want to apply it, so I'm going to hit enter. And that basically crops it. Now here's my image. Now before I do anything else, you can see it's kind of a low contrast image. That's because the deer is kind of hiding in the grass. I guess that's the intent of a deer. But it's a little bit hard to see it. Now I'm not going to be able to do a lot with it. I'm not going to make the deer really stand out. But what I am going to do is just heighten the contrast to this image a little bit. And I'm going to do that by going to adjustment. And you might think, oh, let's go to brightness contrast. But I'd rather have you go to levels because you'll have a little more control over what you can do in levels. And you'll understand a little bit more of how pixels work. So I'll go to levels and you'll see this interface, and you'll see these little hills here. And what these are the highlights. These are the darks or the shadows, and these are the midtones. And this is the distribution of pixels in this image, all the pixels, kind of by light and dark. So you can see that there's kind of a blank area on the ends. That means there's not a lot of darks and there's not a lot of lights. That's why it's kind of low contrast, because they're more in the middle. These are your midtones. This is probably the grass, and this is probably the deer for the most part, the browns and the greens that are kind of in the middle. And what we want to do is just kind of almost stretch these things out to the end so that you have more of a range. And to do that, we basically bring in the highlights. So we basically say that was the brightest bright now, or that was the lightest bright, but it wasn't white. Now we're actually going to make the brightest bright white. And then we're going to make the darkest dark black, and just move right where those kind of hills start. So I'm just kind of narrowing those in, and what it does is it kind of stretches out the range so you have more lights and more darks and a more high contrast image. We're not going to worry about this right now. This kind of does the opposite, the output levels. It lightens the darks and darkens the lights, and we don't have a reason to do that yet. That would be if you had a really high contrast image that you'd want to kind of take down. So that's all we want to do here. We don't want to do anything drastic, and I'll hit OK. And then also I want to maybe sharpen it a little bit. It's because I zoomed in. It's not super clear. Now I'm not going to be able to make it clear. If it was out of focus, I can't do anything with sharpen, but I may make it a little bit more crisp. And I'm going to do that by going to Filter, Unsharp Mask. You might say, why not just sharpen? Because Unsharp Mask gives you some controls on how to do that. And if you basically just use 52 and turn down threshold to 0, it's usually a good amount. You don't want to do it too much. You don't want to over sharpen something and you'll get a lot of like artifacts and kind of like shadows and things. Just 50 is fine for what we're doing here, and I'll hit OK, and that's good. And that's all you want to do with the deer. Now, as far as sizing, I'm going to go to Image, and remember to do things in this little menu, not up here. You might have the tendency to go up here in Chrome and go File, Save, and like that. But you want to make sure you go here to Image Size. And this is 235. Now, I mentioned making it down to like 250. So it's already small enough. But even if I wanted to make it smaller, I would adjust it here and I'd go to 200 and I'd hit OK. And that's pretty much what I'd want. Now, when I want to save it to my computer, I would go File, Save, and I'll just call it Deer. And I'll call it Deer 1 because I think I have another one already. And you don't have to put a JPEG here, but it's saying it is saving it as a JPEG, and that quality is fine. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop on my computer. And that's it. And then you can close this up because you don't need this. We already saved a JPEG version. You don't need this one unless you had to make more changes to it. But if not, you could just close it up and you don't have to save it. Okay, I'm going to open up one more. Just to show you cropping a picture, and this is the one I did of myself. So I'm just going to take this one away, and I think this one is called Pick Home a Desk, and it's coming up here. And this is the one with I have that creepy smile on my face sitting at the desk, and I'm just going to crop my head on this one. So I'll highlight the URL again, and again I'm highlighting the whole URL when I put it in here. Even though it looks like it didn't have the HTTP, it actually does when you paste it. So that's why I'm going to highlight this whole thing. And I'll do a Control V and I'll paste it there. And if you had any problem with that, you'll get an error or something won't come up. So that's probably easier than typing it in. So here I am. I'm just going to crop my head. So the crop tool is already selected. And I'll just kind of crop my head in here. And that's probably about good. I could bring it in a little bit. Remember, it doesn't have to be a perfect square. I just want a little headshot here. And I'll hit Enter. And there's my headshot. And another thing I could do is I could check adjustments. I could go to levels. Now this one, it's fairly a nice contrasty photo, and you could see by the distribution that there's a lot of highlights and the darks go pretty much to the end. So it's a pretty decent photo in terms of a range of pixels. You could maybe lighten the midtones a little bit if my face, the tones of my skin were a little dark or something, or in shadow too much. I could lighten the midtones just a little bit. And that's probably all I would need here. The only thing, my face looks a little yellowish just because of the light coming in the window. I'll hit OK first for this one, but let's say I wanted to cool it down a little. It's a little warm. My face looks a little yellowish and warm, and it's even making my teeth look more yellow. I could go to Adjustment. There's another one that you could do. It's called Color Balance. And if you want to cool it a little, not that you need a whole lesson on color balance, but I'm just going to add more blue. By adding more blue, you can see this is more yellow. This is taking away blue. By adding more blue, it just kind of cools it down a little bit. That's all I want to do, is just everything you do in Pixlr and Photoshop, you just want to do a little bit. You don't want to do a whole lot. You just want to do make subtle changes. So I'm going to hit OK. And the last thing I want to do is just check my image size. Now this one, you could see it's 795 by 900. So this one's a fairly large image. I don't want something like that in a discussion forum. I probably want this around 200. And I'm just going to change that. I won't change the height. I'll leave it so that whatever the width is, the height will just kind of accommodate it. That's what constrained proportion means. You don't want to be turning this off and stretching it and squashing it. So don't uncheck that. I'm going to hit OK. Now it looks real small. That's because it's at 22%. If I put it at 100%, that's what it would look like. And I'm going to save this. And again, I did it by mistake. I went up to the Chrome file, but I want to go down here and go to File, Save. And I'll just call this Homa 1. and I'll hit OK. And you can see now it's putting in the JPEG. If you're in Windows, you may not see the JPEG there. It's probably doing it automatically in Windows. And I'll show you in class how you can change your settings so that you can always see the extension, because I think it's good to see the extension. But I'll hit save, and that's it. Now, if I wanted to upload this to My Warren, I'll go to My Warren, and I'll go to My Courses. I'm logged in, so I'll go to My Courses, and I'll go to csc103. I'll use M1. And where you're going to go to is you're going to go to your coursework, and I'm seeing this in instructor mode. Now, if I would go in student mode, what you would do is you would go to these are out of order here. I think I changed it on the other class. But you would go to student intro and post pic. Now, I'm not going to be able to do this because I can't do this in emulation mode or pretending to be a student because I'm not a student. But what you're going to do is you're going to go to the student intro and topic, and you're going to add a new post. And here's a couple people already added posts. You're going to add a post. I can't do it because it's saying I can't do an emulation mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my instructor mode, and I'll just go to my instructor introduction because it doesn't let me add a post to the student one. And I'm just going to add something to my instructor just to show you something here. I'll give my post just my name. And down here, I'm just going to write something about me. I could write a little blurb about me, and then I'll hit return, so I have a cursor on another line. The reason I'm going to do that, you'll see in a minute, I'm going to add image, and you might have a thing, it might say choose image, but I'm going to do add image. You could choose files here, and add image is asking me to go find the image, and I'm just going to find the one that's at home, a JPEG. It's going right there. And this is a little thumbnail. This is not the one you're going to drag up there. You actually want to click on this so I see the big image. And you can see it's a little bigger even than I thought. But this is a little tricky. If you go to drag it here, it doesn't work. You think, why is it not working? You have to drag it right where the cursor is. And then you'll get a little kind of, you see I'm getting a green circle with a white plus sign. You might get some, if you're on Windows, you might not get the exact same icon, but you'll get something that'll indicate that there's a plus sign there. So you want to make sure you get it right where a cursor is, and that way it'll be in there. Now you could still scale it. If you want to make it a little bit smaller, you could scale it down a little. That's okay, I have no problem. I just don't want people having gigantic photos in here. That's why I'm having you do this in, now you could X out of that. That's why I'm having you do this in Pixlr, so that you know how to do that. And if you ever want to scale it down again and you can't click on it, you just kind of like highlight it and it'll get those little icons there, so, or the little handles on the corner, so then you could resize it again. Or if you delete it, you could just click next to it and hit backspace, and then maybe you want to put it in another picture. And then when you're done, you're going to hit submit with your post. So I'm going to cancel out of this, but that's about it. So you're putting in your blurb and your picture, and that was for assignment 3 for CSC 103 M1. See you guys in class.